أهلا بحضراتكم في تغطية حصرية هكون معاكم فيها أنا هناء أبو العز. في يوم 2 مايو 2011 خرج الرئيس الأمريكي الأسبق باراك أوباما في خطاب هام وعاجل وقتها نقلته كل وسائل الإعلام حول العالم. خرج يومها الرئيس الأمريكي ليعلن أن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية نجحت في قتل أسامة بن لادن زعيم تنظيم القاعدة المختبئ في أحد المواقع بمدينة أبوتاباد في باكستان في عملية أشرفت عليها وكالة الاستخبارات الأمريكية ونفذها فريق القوات الخاصة التابع للقوات البحرية الأمريكية. الحقيقة إن في الفترة من 2011 ولحد 2014 ما كانش معروف مين هو الضابط اللي نجح في قتل زعيم تنظيم القاعدة لحد ما تم الإعلان عن قاتل أسامة بن لادن وتحديدا في نوفمبر 2014. الحقيقة إن زميلنا رامي نوار بحث كتير علشان نوصل للضابط الأمريكي السابق روبرت أونيل قاتل أسامة بن لادن عشان ننفرد معاه بحوار تلفزيوني. احنا معاكم من هنا في تلفزيون اليوم السابع بننفرد بهذا اللقاء الحصري مع العسكري السابق روبرت أونيل أحد أفراد فريق القوات الخاصة التابعة للقوات البحرية الأمريكية وقاتل أسامة بن لادن زعيم تنظيم القاعدة السابق، وهو اللقاء الأول له في وسائل الإعلام العربية والمصرية. We want to thank you for accepting this interview to talk about an issue which we will never get tired of hearing.
I appreciate your time. Thank you for having me. It's quite an invitation and I'm happy to have been able to accept.
I want to start with a question that may be on the minds of many. The killing of Osama bin Laden took place on May 2nd, 2011, but it was announced that you had killed Osama bin Laden in November 2014. So, what is the reason behind your silence during these years?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes, it was announced the morning of May 2nd in Eastern Standard Time in the United States that we killed Osama bin Laden. And it was known in our circle of what happened. I've never wanted to say it was me, it was the team, it was the full effort, it was the women that found bin Laden. My name came out from my mouth because when I went to the 9/11 Museum Memorial in New York City, I was able to speak with family members who had lost loved ones in the towers there. And they told me, because I was donating the shirt that I wore to Osama bin Laden's house to the museum, not with my name on it, but just for closure, to show people that something that was there when he was killed, because Osama bin Laden was the reason that we were attacked in New York City. And for these family members to tell me face to face that they can put a name and a face with that, well, there'll never be closure, but there is help with the healing process. And not that it wasn't just an attack on the United States. There were about 84 countries that had people die in those towers there. And it was an attack an attack by evil on the rest of us who were just trying to get on with our lives on the planet. And I decided right then that I've assumed risk before, and if I can help so many people that were affected by this, I would assume risk again. And that was the reason I said I did it.
Walk us through to the moment you know you were going to face the world's most wanted terrorist. Have you thought about retreating, especially as it may be one-way mission?
Well, we talked about it, we being the team, and everyone who was there, because we could have been shot down. It was 90 minutes to fly from Afghanistan to Abbottabad, Pakistan. So the pilots, the people making the aircraft run, and the operators on the plane, if any one of us would have been hit, we would have died. It was one way for all of us, but we decided that was the reason why we went into the Navy, went into the Army, was to defend people from the evil that's out there. And it was worth it, because innocent people are not supposed to be in the fight. I mean, I would prefer there were no fighting at all, ever. But this is something that needed to happen to bring someone to justice who killed so many innocent people in so many different places. And that's why we came in to the military, and we're going to go out on this mission. And if sacrificing ourselves for other people, if that's what it takes, it's worth it. And we had that conversation. It's a difficult conversation. It's one of the, if we know we're going to die, why are we going? But that was why, and we did it for others.
It was a brave situation, a brave decision.
I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.
If you will excuse me, I may ask, when you know you were going on a one-way mission, who did you think of at this moment? Did you send messages, letters, or made phone call? And what did you write or say?
I wrote letters to everyone in my family and a few close friends, especially to my family, though, saying that, I wish I had more time, but what we did was noble. This needed to be done by somebody. And the person I thought of last was my father, because he raised me. Obviously, my mom and dad raised me, but he and I were very close with everything from hunting to fishing to basketball. And I would call him on other missions before and just tell him, hey, I would say I have to go to work tonight. But on this one, and he would always say, I wish I was going with you. And I would say, yeah, me too, Dad. And I'll call you when it's done. But on this one, he said, I wish I was going with you. And all I said was, don't worry, Dad, I'm going with some great guys. Mm-hmm. And I was almost thanking him for teaching me how to grow up and teaching me how to be a man. I thanked him for that. And I couldn't tell him what we were doing, but I could tell in his voice that he was kind of shooken up by it. And it was almost like a goodbye. It was a thank you and a goodbye. And it was difficult, but sometimes you're put in a place where the only time is now, and it's time to do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, he deserves. Take us back, Robert, to moment you met the leader of terrorist organization. How did he look? Was he wearing an explosive vest, or was there a shootout? Did he say anything?
When we first landed, everything went wrong. And I think it's important for people to realize that when you make a plan to do something, God laughs at you because something else will happen. And our plan went wrong. A helicopter crashed in the front yard. We were put in the wrong spot, and they were defending themselves, they being Al-Qaeda. So there was a fight before I got there, a few shootouts. There was one more on the stairwell, and I found myself at the top of the third floor, the last set of stairs. And then there was one man in front of me, one of my guys, he went forward, and because he went one way, I turned, and then I saw Osama Bin Laden and his wife Amal Bin Laden. And because there had been gunfire both ways, I assumed if anybody would be wearing a vest, would be Osama Bin Laden. And when I saw him, it was very quick, and I did a quick assessment. He's taller than I thought he would be. He's skinnier than I thought he would be. His beard was not quite as long, and it was gray. And the way that he had his hands on his wife's shoulders in front of me, it looked like he was almost maneuvering and pushing her toward me. And at that moment, I had to assume he had on a suicide vest or he was going to blow up the whole room. And just based on my rules of engagement, I had to shoot him in the head just because that's the way you have to deal with someone who might blow up. It turned out he didn't have a vest, but at the time, based on the high threat, that was how I had to engage him.
Excuse me, did he say anything?
Nothing was said. I didn't have time to say anything. I don't really talk much when I'm working anyway. And I had read, I didn't know at the time, but I had read in maybe one of Amal's accounts that he said, they're not here for you, they're here for me. But nothing was said between him.
Why was killing Bin Laden the choice you made rather than arresting him and obtaining important information? We
had discussed that. But because of the threat level of the entire house blowing up, of him blowing up and killing everybody there, if he had been there by himself with no shirt on and his hands up, I would have taken him. I would have, if we wanted intelligence to arrest him, I would have. But the way he presented himself, he had less than a second to convince me not to shoot him, and he didn't do it. I perceived him as a threat to the entire team, his entire family, and so and I've dealt with suicide bombers before, and the only way to deal with the suicide bomber is to shoot them in the head because it happens so fast. I've seen them. I wish no one would ever see that, but a suicide bomber is very fast, it's very loud, and it's violent. And if you're going to prevent it, that's the only way to do it. That was the only option that I had.
Was the killing of Bin Laden filmed? If so, why the photos of the operation were never published even after 11 years?
I don't know. I wish they would publish some of the photos. We took some there in the house, and they're a little bit more gruesome because he had just been killed. But we do have those. And then when we brought his body back to be identified, and we have professional photos taken by someone like a coroner or something like that, and they are out there. Won't release them. I don't know. It would almost be more closure and more healing to realize it's done, because I know how people talk and they say that it never happened. And that's up to them. We all know there are people in government positions that do stuff that we disagree with, and that's one of them. I wish they wouldn't show everybody, but they chose not to.
How did you feel when you succeeded in killing the mind who carried out the events of September 11th?
Well, at first, the initial reaction was maybe we can live through the night. So we needed to gather whatever intelligence information we could from the house, and then we needed to figure out a way out of there. We were fortunate enough to call in more people with a different helicopter, and then we had to live 90 minutes a flight from Abbottabad, Pakistan, across the border into Afghanistan. And then when we got back, the initial reaction was, "Wow, we did it!" And then it was almost surreal at first, and it didn't quite sink in until we saw President Obama announce to the world. He said that we conducted a mission that killed Osama Bin Laden, leader of Al Qaeda, and we saw people celebrating all around the world, and it sort of sunk in that this was a big deal. Anything that happens right now doesn't feel historic, but that's when it started to sink in that this will go down in history, and it was an honor to be called, to be part of a team picked to do that. It was just to be selected as one of the best. I worked with the best people in the world, and it was an honor for me to be a part of it. And it was something we could all be proud of.
Bin Laden was killed in Pakistan. Why was body transferred to Afghanistan?
He was transferred back to Afghanistan because that is where we had some secure bases where we could land. We didn't check with Pakistan before we went in to get him, and so we didn't have anywhere to bring him. So we brought him back, and that's where we had people there who could do DNA tests, take pictures, and the like, just for proof of death to confirm it. So we had to bring him out.
I know that you participated in about 400 military operations. So what's the difference between the operation to kill Bin Laden and the other operations?
Well, as time goes on, that's one of the missions that I think was necessary. We needed to do that because we were, as a coalition, pulled into that fight. Other ones in places like Iraq and around the world, now that I'm older, I question whether or not we should have been there, and what did it prove to anybody? Why were we there? Was it for the right reasons? But that one really meant a lot, and the other missions were just part of my experience to get there. One of the reasons why I was picked to be on that great team was because I'd had so many missions before that. And so the one good thing I could take of the missions before that one was it gave me the experience to be able to go into Pakistan.
How did the killing of Bin Laden affect your personal and psychological life?
Well, it changed everything. Like I said, the only time that your plan works is while you're planning. Once you do something else, it changes. So my plan was never to join the Navy, but I did, and then I stayed in for that. But once I was in the Navy, it was to always be in the Navy. But then after the Osama bin Laden raid, just due to external circumstances, it was time for me to get out of the Navy and do other things. So it changed everything from what I did for a living, how I earned a living, and then how do I deal with that from now on? There are people around there's some people around the world who aren't happy with that. I never wanted to have my name known until a certain time, and now I do. So it changed a lot of things. I went from being someone who goes to get coffee on the corner and just sits there to someone who gets recognized, and that's just something to deal with day by day. And I'm the only person who's ever dealt with something like this, so there was nobody with experience to tell me how to handle it. And so far it's been positive. I mean, I still think it was a good thing that happened. I think everyone I've met thinks it's a good thing, and I hope that we can all see it's a good thing. That if we can prevent evil from happening, the world will be a better place.
I need to ask you, did you receive any threats after your name was revealed?
Well, I've seen people write stuff on social media, and that happens with everybody, though. I'm sure everybody that has a Twitter handle gets threats. Nothing in person, nothing too serious. There have been people coming into the country, but I think anyone who doesn't believe the ideology of the terrorists is a target, and I'm just a different one. If you don't believe in their ideology, you'll be a target too, and it's a question of who's easiest to get to. The thing is, though, it's important not to get complacent. You need to take care of yourself, and the realization that bad guys only need to be right one time. So you can't get complacent, and you need to be aware of everything. But I think that's important. That's an important lesson for everybody, no matter where you are at your house or in an airplane or on a boat. Be aware of your surroundings, be aware of contingencies, and don't be afraid to take care of yourself.
On another side, I need to ask you, as a former United States Navy SEAL, I would like to ask you about your opinion on the United States decision to invade Iraq. Was it right?
No, I don't think it was right. And I was a part of it. I went into Iraq and I fought in Iraq. And as you know, from personal experience, I can see how I wanted to fight because I was trained to fight, and I believe my leaders. But looking back, I think it was something that was they were able to take advantage of 9/11 because a lot of people in power wanted to invade Iraq because of the past, and that decision had an effect on so many people overseas that that didn't need to. I look back and it actually it's sad sometimes when I think about people that I've been in fights with. And I wonder, why were we in a fight? We were just in a fight because we were born in two different places. Had I met some of these people that I've been in fights with in a different place, like we mentioned Spain, what if I met this guy in Spain over coffee? Maybe we would have laughed. Maybe he was funny. Maybe I would have told him a joke. And so that's why it's very. I mentioned earlier about people in charge making decisions. I think it's important you don't need to follow the herd and the loudest crowd. You need to take a step back and take a breath and actually ask yourself, what are we doing and why? I think the invasion of Iraq was wrong, and we're still, we, meaning all of us, and especially the Middle East, is still suffering from it.
Before I ask you about President Joe Biden, I know that you are a big supporter of former President Donald Trump. So what was your opinion when he spoke about the conspiracy theory that the killing of Osama Bin Laden was a hoax? So and don't forget to tell me the story of the photo that brings you together with him.
the thing with the conspiracy theory, the problem I had with that is he retweeted something that a conspiracy theorist tweeted. And I thought, as a president, that's inappropriate. In his defense, President Trump never said it was a hoax. He was putting something out. But I think as someone in that office, he shouldn't have done that. Now, saying a big supporter of President Trump, I was a supporter of a lot of his ideas, but I also disagreed with him a lot of the time. And I think that's important when you're with somebody. If you're in a room where everybody agrees with you, or you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And too many people get surrounded by people that just say yes or no. I've disagreed with President Trump. I've agreed with President Obama. And that's just the way I am. What I like to say is that if you tell the truth, you don't need to remember lies. And so I will tell people, it doesn't matter which news station I'm on or which interview I give, I will tell you exactly what I'm thinking. And that's just what it is. And if I'm wrong, tell me why, and I'll admit that I was wrong. But the picture with the White House, I had known Donald Trump before he was president. I actually met him when he was in charge of the Miss USA pageant. I happened to be there, and I met him, and then I saw him again, and I've been to his office. And it was one weekend where he invited my wife and I to the White House for dinner. And I don't care if President Biden's in power or President Trump, President Obama, President Bush. When the president gives you an invitation to eat at the White House, you accept it. Just because it's cool, I think.
Why did you describe President Joe Biden's decision to withdraw from Afghanistan as a late decision?
It was a poor decision because, like so many politicians, he made it based on political ground. They were saying that if they can get all of the American troops out of Afghanistan by the 20th anniversary of September 11th, that would be a political victory. And that's a huge mistake, because in war, you never give a timeline, and everybody knows that. And the entire way up in Afghanistan I think we could have been out of Afghanistan and done in 2005, other than killing Osama Bin Laden. So I don't like to sit here and say we should have done this, should have done that. We should have, whatever. But the decision to leave that quickly, and that it was a bad decision, giving up Bagram Airfield first, giving the Taliban security, and then just trying to pull out. We lost so many people in so many attacks for no reason, just based on politics. And if you're making decisions on re-election or getting elected, that's a big mistake.
Rob, I'm really curious to ask you that after 11 years of killing Bin Laden, do you receive appreciation from the United States of America?
Yes, I receive it individually, and it's always nice because it doesn't even matter if you were there. Everyone that was alive was affected by 9/11, and some people who weren't even alive yet were affected. And I'm able to hear different stories every single time of how 9/11 affected them, and then how the mission to kill Osama bin Laden affected them. And so, like I said, so far it's been very positive every time. And if I can help people with anything in life, everyday life, or healing, it's an honor for people to think of me that way. I don't think of me that way, but it's every time I hear something good, I'm happy. It's a lot easier to get places with a smile than with a frown.
You deserve. Finally, we would like to know more about your two books, The Operator and The Way Forward, and why you didn't consider translating them in Arabic.
Now, I have considered translating them into Arabic. I think that would be wonderful because some of the most welcoming and loving people I've met have spoken Arabic, and there's no reason I haven't yet. But after this, if you can help me do it, I'm all about it. I will totally do it. But my first book is called The Operator, and that was just a memoir of myself. And I call it The Operator because I think I'm not calling myself the operator. Anybody who does anything, the mechanic at the shop, the mom who raises the kids, if you're doing something to help people, help yourself, and get along, you're the operator. So that's from how I got in the Navy to the Bin Laden mission to what's after that. And then I wrote The Way Forward with my friend Dakota Meyer, who is a U.S. Marine Medal of Honor recipient. And he and I were both, people who didn't know we were joining the military, and then we got thrust into the limelight, and then we got out. He got out of the Marine Corps, I got out of the Navy, and we're both kind of like, what next? What do we do now? I got out of the Navy at 35 years old. I've got a lot of life left. How do I keep the lights on? How do I pay the mortgage? What next? What's the way forward? And if you think about it, everyone right now listening to this has something to do next. What do we do next? What's the way forward? So we just gave our advice from two people from small towns and what now. And it doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a company or you're flipping hamburgers. We've all had our first day somewhere. We've all been nervous. What do we do next? So that's the way forward.
In the end, I thank you once again for appearing with us on the اليوم السابع TV.
Thank you so much for having me.
بنشكر العسكري السابق روبرت أونيل، أحد أفراد فريق القوات الخاصة التابعة للقوات البحرية الأمريكية وقاتل أسامة بن لادن زعيم تنظيم القاعدة السابق. كان معانا في لقاء حصري على تلفزيون اليوم السابع. وقبل ما نختم بنشكر زميلنا رامي نوار على اللقاءات الحصرية اللي دايما بننفرد بيها في تلفزيون اليوم السابع. وكنت معاكم أنا هناء أبو العز، وانتظرونا في لقاءات حصرية جديدة.